I want to welcome everyone to our live event on positive intelligence. How lucky are we to have an expert with us tonight? I am thrilled to have all of you join us and hopefully are also joining the Year of Joy. We want to thank you for your engagement and hope that you'll continue to engage with us and give us feedback on how things are going and what you think we need to do to increase your engagement in our Year of Joy. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing our expert on positive intelligence. We have with us Natalie Siston. She is the program experience leader at Positive Intelligence. In her role, she brings positive intelligence to companies around the world through partnerships, presentations, and the flagship PQ program. Prior to joining Positive Intelligence, Natalie was the director of sales coaching and development at a Fortune 100 financial services company, where she also held roles in marketing, relationship management, and business development. She began her career in student and alumni relations at Stanford University. Natalie is a two-time graduate of The Ohio State University, my alma mater as well, and professional coach accredited through the International Coach Federation. She has 20 plus years of experience coaching, developing leaders, and strengthening teams in the nonprofit, higher education, and corporate sectors. She is a frequent speaker at Leadership University and corporate events, and is an active member of the National Speakers Association. Natalie resides in Dublin, Ohio, in the United States of America, with her husband and two young daughters. She is the author of the best-selling book, Let Her Out, Reclaim Who You Have Always Been. Please welcome Natalie.
Thank you so much, Debbie, and the entire team for inviting Positive Intelligence to be part of a Year of Joy. I can't think of anything better to help establish a joyful habit than to take care of yourself. And what we're going to do tonight is I am going to take you to Positive Intelligence and Mental Fitness School for about 20 or 25 minutes. I'm going to unpack kind of a lot of stuff that's in the book behind me, so you have a general idea of what is this concept of positive intelligence. And then I'm super excited that Andrew and Shari are going to join me on screen, and the three of us are going to do a panel discussion / Q&A. So please bring us your questions. Among the three of us, we look forward to answering it, as Andrew and Shari have both had their own unique and individual experiences with positive intelligence. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the, as I'll call it, the lecture portion of our event. And I hope you will take away some really fantastic learnings, and I look forward to addressing your questions as we get to the back half of the event. First thing that I want everyone to know, and as we're thinking about the Year of Joy and what could be getting in the way of our Year of Joy, it's probably ourselves. Every single day, you and I are sabotaging our own performance, our own relationships, and our own well-being. Tonight, we're going to unpack why we do that, what causes that, and give you a couple of techniques to move forward into more of a positive mind space so you can be experiencing the joy you're meant to experience in your life. I'm going to dive into the content here and start where I think it's best to start, which is, what is mental fitness? The definition of mental fitness that we're hinging on in our work is your capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive rather than negative mindset. Pretty basic definition that unpacks in many, many layers. And we're going to go about a half a layer deep tonight to really understand how you are from a mental fitness perspective and how you can get even stronger. Positive intelligence is based in 4 areas of science. It comes from neuroscience, cognitive behavioral psychology, positive psychology, and performance science. And we are founded by and led by Shirzad Chamine. He's the New York Times bestselling author of the same book titled Positive Intelligence. And what Shirzad wanted to do when he came up with this concept many years ago was to get to the root cause. What is truly getting in the way of our peak performance, our peak happiness, and our peak well-being? So he conducted factor analysis to help unpack all of that and understand what is getting in our way. And what he came up with, what the research showed, was that each of us have saboteurs. And each of us also has access to something called sage. So tonight I'm going to introduce you to the saboteurs, and I'm also going to introduce you to the sage, because what's happening right now is we are predominantly wired to go to the negative portion of our brain. It's our survival instinct. It's how we've survived in this many generations. But in our modern society, in our day-to-day life, that is not serving us. So what we can learn to do and what we can actually do is rewire our brain so we can more automatically go to the positive side of our brain, not the negative. So it's the saboteurs and the sage that are getting in our way. And there's some simple techniques you can use to shift from one to the other. I'm going to dive in and talk about these saboteurs. I'm going to go pretty quickly through these, and we have a great assessment. We'll be sure to put the link in the chat for you, but if you haven't already, make sure you take the saboteur assessment. It is a wonderful, wonderful tool to help you understand how you're getting in the way of your own joy and how you're blocking yourself from your true potential. The one saboteur that each and every one of us have, the master saboteur, is called the judge. Now, the judge for many people is extraordinarily loud, and it shouts at us and it tells us that we're not good enough, and it wakes us up in the middle of the night. It shakes us by the shoulders, constantly having us question ourselves. For other people, their judge is sneaky. It's quiet. She sits on your shoulder and says, "You sure about that? Stay quiet. They're not going to pick you. Play small." Your judge is likely a result of your upbringing. Your judge was there to protect you at one point in your life, but now is likely to see their very loud voice or very sneaky voice that's getting in the way of your peak performance, your top joy. And the judge is also sneaky because it operates in 3 different modes. So the one we can all probably understand is judge of self. You hear imposter syndrome, you hear inner critic, you hear gremlin. That's all judgment of self. We also have judgment of others. And this is blaming other people for all the circumstances in your life that aren't going as you want them to. So that's the second mode of this judge. The third mode of the judge is one that a lot of people don't think about, but now that I bring it to your attention tonight, I'm sure you're going to catch yourself or potentially other people finding themselves in this mode of judgment. And this is judge of circumstances. This is saying, I will be happy when. I will be happy when I get the promotion. I'll be happy when I find the partner. I'll be happy when I'm living in that big house. It's making our entire happiness conditional. So your first self-awareness check moving forward from a session like tonight is to really help yourself answer, when is this judge showing up for me? And what mode is it operating in? Is it judging self? Is it judging others? Or is it judging circumstances? That's usually the noisiest, biggest negative voice that's hanging out in your life. And unfortunately, the judge has some friends. The judge comes with 9 accomplice saboteurs. Now, if you take the saboteur assessment, you're going to get the list of how strong these saboteurs are for you. Most of us are predominantly afflicted by 2 or 3 of the following saboteurs. I'm going to go through each of them really quickly, because if you haven't taken it, it'll give you an idea of them. If you have taken it tonight, listen for nuance, listen for something you might not have thought about yourself, and also listen for those who are close to you in your life. How might a colleague or a partner or a child or family member, what saboteur might be showing up for them? So here are the 9 accomplice saboteurs. The first is the avoider. And the avoider focuses on the positive and pleasant in an extreme way and avoids difficult and unpleasant tasks and conflicts. Now, the avoider does this so they can live a pleasant, happy life. They don't want to ruffle feathers. They don't want to get into the conflict. And the opposite is what ends up happening, because the longer things are avoided, the longer hard conversations are avoided, the harder life becomes. So we get the opposite of what we're wishing with many of these saboteurs. Next, we have controller, which has an anxiety-based need to take charge and control situations and people's actions. And when things don't go the controller's way, they experience high anxiety and impatience when it's not possible, almost diametrically opposite the avoider. Now, oftentimes someone who has a controller saboteur will say, but if I didn't take charge, nothing would ever get done. And that may be true. Leadership is important, but oftentimes the controller is coming with negative energy, which breaks down trust, which can corrode relationships. This saboteur can be extremely detrimental in building relationships. Now we have a trifecta of hypers. The first is the hyperachiever. The hyperachiever is dependent on constant performance and achievement for self-respect and self-validation. It's highly focused on external success, which leads to these unsustainable workaholic tendencies, loss of touch with deeper emotional and relationship needs. I think this picture says it all. I have an armful of trophies and I'm reaching after the next one. Hyperachiever might have originated when you were younger and you came home and you got a sticker on that paper and you showed it to your parents and they were so proud. They hung it on the refrigerator. They made a big deal about it. And you thought, wow, this is how I get love. This is how I get attention, is by achieving. And you kept achieving day after day, year after year. And now you might find yourself in a place where you're workaholic and you can't even thank the people around you because you're just going after the next award. This can lead to another one that can lead to corrosive relationships and also burnout. Then we have hyper-rational, intensive and exclusive focus on the rational processing of everything, including relationships. Can be perceived as cold, distant, intellectually arrogant. Hyper-rational might originate from stepping into vulnerability and it backfiring and saying, okay, I'm not going to do this human people stuff. I'm going to focus on the facts. I'm going to stick to the black and white. I'm not going to deal with these feelings. Now, that would be wonderful if we lived in a world where we weren't all humans and we need the human interaction and we need to be on a level of emotional intelligence with each other. So this desire to avoid being in emotions is actually going to corrode the relationships and the performance because you won't be able to connect on that human level. Hypervigilant, continuous intense anxiety about all the dangers and what could go wrong. It's vigilance that can never rest. If I had to redraw this picture, I would put a picture of a shoe getting ready to drop, because someone with a hypervigilant saboteur is looking around every corner. They're waiting for the next danger. They're always on alert. Vigilance is a good thing, but when it's keeping us in constant stress and anxiety, it becomes extraordinarily detrimental and corrosive, and it erodes our happiness. It keeps us from experiencing the joy. So the other shoe's always going to drop. Now the pleaser indirectly tries to gain acceptance and affection by helping, pleasing, rescuing, flattering others, loses sight of own needs, and becomes resentful as a result. So this person thinks the way to get love is to give love. And it's always a give and give and give, and they can never receive. And this leads to two really important outcomes to understand. One is that one day the pleaser wakes up and says, when is it my turn? And that leads to the resentment. And they wake up exhausted and it leads to burnout. So this desire to be loved turns into burnout and resentment. Now we have restless with the 6 arms, constantly in search of greater excitement, the next activity, and constant busyness, rarely at peace or content with the current activity. This happens for 2 reasons. The first is fear of missing out. I don't want to miss the next thing, so I'm going to go, chase. The second reason this might happen is because I don't actually want to deal with the feelings I'm feeling. So in order to avoid feeling them, I will just constantly be in motion. I have a colleague who has the restless saboteur, and she said to us one day, she said, I had a big wake-up call this weekend. She said, I was reviewing all the pictures of my family over the last few years. And she's like, I took most of those pictures but I don't remember those moments because I was on to the next. She wasn't being fully present in her life, and that's what the restless steals from us, the ability to be fully present in our life. Now we have the stickler. This is perfectionism and a need for order and organization taken too far. Those three words are key. Your saboteur usually comes from your greatest strength taken too far. So having an attention to detail, dotting I's, crossing T's, this can be a great strength. But when it's keeping you up at night, when it has you going into your sent email, checking to see if you made mistakes, when it has you constantly focused on other people's mistakes, that's when you know you're in saboteur mode. That's the negative emotion that this saboteur is causing. And finally, we have victim, emotional and temperamental as a way to gain attention and affection, an extreme focus on internal feelings, particularly painful ones. So with the victim, oftentimes they see the way to receive love is by showing need, by having other people come rescue them. They feel the love. So these are your 9 accomplice saboteurs. And like I said, if you haven't had an opportunity, make sure you take the saboteur assessment, because that's a 10-minute overview of what will be an amazing report that outlines all of the saboteurs, their origin stories, and how they are likely affecting you and where they came from you. So that's our top resource we're pointing out tonight. So make sure you take a look at that. The saboteurs lead to a very important question, which is, are negative emotions good for you? And this is something you can just think of really quickly in your head. Is this a yes or a no for you? Which follows but the same question, which is pain good for you? Is pain good for you? So the answer that I would like to provide here is that negative emotions are only helpful for 1 second as an alert signal. When you're in negative emotion, you are in saboteur. It's like the vision of a hand on a hot stove. That pain, that less than a second of pain that you experience with that hot stove teaches you to take your hand off that burner. The same thing exists with negative emotion. When you recognize that you're a negative emotion, you have an opportunity to say, I'm going to shift and I'm going to try to be in different emotion. If you allow your hand to remain on that hot stove, you are allowing yourself to be sabotaged. So what we do with our work in positive intelligence and mental fitness is to train yourself to intercept that moment that the saboteur is causing you stress, anxiety, any negative emotion, and how to convert that into more positive emotion. And that's what I'll share with you now. We do this through what's called a PQ rep. PQ stands for Positive Intelligent Quotient, and it's our short term for positive intelligence. And we do something called a 10-second PQ rep. And I'm going to invite you to do this along with me. I will stay on screen and do it, and you can do it in the blissful privacy of the room where you're in now. I'm going to show you how to do 1 PQ rep, and then I'm going to explain the modes that you can practice for yourself after this session. So what I'm going to invite you to do is rub 2 fingertips together with such attention that you could feel the fingertip ridges on either finger. If you did that along with me, congratulations, you just did your first PQ rep. And this is what helps calm our mind. It's what helps take the automatic neural pathway into that negative part of the brain and send it over to the positive part of the brain. And we're doing that by focusing on one sensory activity. In that case, we were doing a tactile activity. You can also do tactile PQ reps by feeling your feet on the floor, feeling your seat on your chair. Tactile works really well, especially when you might be in a stressful situation, in a meeting. You can just rub your fingers together under the table. No one would even know. You can do that with your other senses too. So you can do auditory PQ reps. You can listen for the farthest away sound. You can listen to the closest sound, which might be your own breathing. You focus in on that sensory experience. You can focus on your breath. by focusing on taking in deep breaths, releasing breaths, focusing on the temperature of the air as it enters and exits your nostrils. You can do these by focusing on visual, really focusing on something in front of you. It can even be another person if you're in an interaction with them. These PQ reps help you detach from that negative thinking side of your brain. You're almost neutralizing yourself by focusing solely on the sensory experience so you can more easily get into your positive emotion. That's a very, very quick review of a PQ rep. For those of you who do things like meditation or even yoga, these are forms of doing PQ repping, but the beauty of doing a PQ rep is you can do this for 10 seconds at a time. You can do it in the middle of a stressful situation. And by focusing in that moment, you can calm yourself down and you can help yourself recenter and move into positive, which is what we call the sage. So what is the sage? The sage lives in the region of the brain associated with positive emotions, peace and calm, clear-headed focus, creativity, big picture thinking, and it operates from the sage perspective, which is that every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift and opportunity. Every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift and opportunity, even the toughest situations in your life. This is a huge concept that we work on in positive intelligence. It takes up, a whole chapter of the book, an entire week of the program we have. And for now, your takeaway is to just remember those moments in your life that at the time seemed like you would never move past them. And now upon looking back, you can see the good that's come from that, the opportunities that have come from that. So I invite you to think about and adopt this sage perspective. What's interesting about our brain, I didn't go into a ton of brain science, but if you want to go geek out, definitely read our neuroscience white paper. It's linked in the Year of Joy community. It's also available on the Positive Intelligence website. But just for those of you who are interested in more of the brain science, our saboteurs tend to live in our left side of the brain, but so do our analytical powers. So we're never going to tell you to shut down the left side of your brain, but instead focus on, what good elements are coming there. So your left brain has amazing analytical powers. So we never want you to turn that off. But imagine what could be possible if you match up this amazing analytical power in your left brain with these 5 powers in the right brain. Empathize, explore, navigate, innovate, and activate. These are 5 sage powers. And these allow you to think with deep, deep empathy for other people, have deep curiosity, focus on values and the why, be creative and innovative, and take calm, clear-headed, laser-focused action. Those sage powers are extraordinarily powerful. And like I said, because we're doing the very, very quick version tonight, we're not going to go into them in depth. But what we do have now is the very highest level framework that you can take forward from tonight when you find yourself in negative emotion to convert. So I'm going to walk you through our 4-step process that you could use moving forward from tonight to help yourself shift from positive to negative. So the very first thing you do is if you're feeling negative emotions, stop. You are in saboteur mode. That's what we call intercepting the saboteur. So you're feeling that negative emotion, stop. What are you going to do? You're going to do some of those PQ reps. And what do those PQ reps do? They quiet the saboteurs and they activate the sage. Then you assume the sage perspective that every problem can be converted into a gift and opportunity. This is a really important piece. It's great to recognize and intercept. It's great to do PQ reps to calm yourself down. Then this is your opportunity to convert into sage and say, okay, with this stress I'm experiencing, with this problem I'm having, what might be the gift and opportunity? And then you have a choice to use one of these 5 amazing sage powers of empathize, explore, navigate, innovate, or activate to go even deeper. And all of these are explained fully in the Positive Intelligence book. You can probably glean a little bit just from the titles that I'm sharing here with you, but it's really about digging in and saying, I can convert, and I can convert even more deeply by trying to be innovative or activating from a pure positive sage perspective. One of the most important and interesting things I've learned along my positive intelligence journey, which I'll share a little bit more with you about when we get into our Q&A with Andrew and Shari, is just how we end up learning and make transformation in our life. So what we know is that lasting positive change requires two elements. It requires 20% insight. So you showing up tonight to a session like this is insight. Reading a book, listening to a podcast, that's insight, that's learning. It's exciting. It's really important to make that happen. And then the other part, and my slide isn't showing here, but the other part of that pie is mental muscle. So mental muscle is where we really, really see the lasting change. So what I want you to take away from tonight is that in order to make a change, in order to be mentally fit, in order to start to rewire your brain, you have to pause. You have to do something like a PQ rep, and you have to allow yourself to shift into that sage perspective. It's doing those 4 steps day in, day out. That is what creates a habit. And over 6 to 8 weeks, if you practice for 15 minutes a day, intercepting your day at 2-minute intervals throughout your day. When you wake up, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, if you practice for 2 minutes, that's when you can start to see changes in an MRI scan. That's when you can start to see the neural pathways weakening from your negative side of your brain and strengthening in your positive side of the brain. So that's in order to do that, I just want to share a little bit. We do have an app-guided program at Positive Intelligence. You can feel free to explore that, but it helps guide you in that 6 to 8 weeks of practice. This is the question I want to leave you with before Andrew, Shari, and I dive into our conversation, which is, what would be different in your life if you were more in command of your mind? If you're willing to share that in the chat, feel free. If not, I want you to write that down. I want you to hold that in your heart. And I want you to use that as your motivation moving forward from a session like tonight and the continued work you'll do throughout a year of joy. What would be different in your life if you were more in command of your mind? I know what I covered tonight was extraordinarily brief. And I'm a little bit sorry for that, because I always geek out and I could spend 2 hours with you, but I hope it gave you just a little glimpse into how focusing on your mental fitness, how doing something as simple as rubbing your fingertips together and purposely choosing a new perspective can help you get to a place in your life where you naturally experience more joy. Because when we are stuck in negative emotion, when our hand is on that hot stove, we can't experience the joy that each and every one of us are entitled to in our beautiful, beautiful lives. So I thank you for going to this Positive Intelligence School with me. And I would love to bring up my esteemed colleagues, Andrew and Shari, so we can have hopefully a really fun discussion around our own personal journeys with positive intelligence. And of course, be happy to answer the questions that are coming from the audience at the same time. All right, Shari and Andrew, you here with me?
We are. Let's just get us spotlighted.
That's right.
Do that.
Do that while I sip from my Ohio State cup, because the 4 of us tonight are representing.
Will they go Buckheads or whatever they were?
Your Buckeyes. Just be very
that was close.
I'm actually impressed. I'm pretty impressed that you would pick that up. So excellent. Well, I am going to kick us off with, I'm going to actually turn the tables and do some questions, because I need a break and don't want to talk for a minute. So, Andrew, I think the main question that we really want everyone to address is, how does positive intelligence connect to joy? And would love for you to kick us off with that discussion.
I think it's the mental fitness, to me, is the link that connects these 2 things. Our own research has shown us that a lot of the challenges people have with emotional well-being actually stem from challenges they have with mental well-being or mental fitness, right? That they come across these challenges in their lives, and if they don't have the mental tools to deal with those, that leads them down this path to having a poor emotional well-being, anxiety, depression, whatever, different types of challenges people end up with. And we find the focus is very much on that emotional well-being and trying to fix that. Whereas, I think if we can do more in advance to give people the tools to tackle these, recognize these problems, as you say, stop, shout stop, and have a tool process by which they can then learn to intercept what's going to happen, that will prevent that dip from being very deep or even happening at all, which will give them, much stronger emotional well-being, which we know is one of the key factors of living a joyful life. Unfortunately, if you're struggling with your emotional well-being, depression, anxiety, stress, it really is hard to get up in the morning and say, hey, I feel today's going to be a great day. Right. So, but rather than focus on that problem, to focus on preempting those problems with these solutions that tools like yours can help with.
Thank you, Andrew, for bringing it to the research. Shari, what about you? What's your linkage between positive intelligence, mental fitness, and joy?
What Andrew said. No, I mean, our mental, most of us, I don't want to, well, I am generalizing, but research says, a lot of us live in our heads. We're always overthinking. We, as you mentioned with the saboteurs and stuff, like spend a lot of time trying to prevent certain things by happening. And I have found that, which we'll get into, that when my mind is balanced, then I'm able to tap in to all of those emotions like joy. I'm able to access them a lot easier because I'm not stuck in the emergency mode. What is going on? That I'm able to be more present with everything. So being able to be mentally balanced and with positive intelligence really is a joy igniter because we're connected to our true selves.
Joy igniter. I think we need to hashtag that one.
I like that. I could add to that, Natalie, the thing that you mentioned about relationships as well, because belonging is a huge source of joy again. And I think the thing I picked up from listening to you talking about the saboteurs was there's a lot of those damaged relationships, right? It's hard to be in a relationship with somebody who's over controlling, who's a perfectionist, who's restless all the time, whatever those saboteurs are. If they are too extreme, that damages that relationship on a personal level, and maybe also on a friend's level, that you end up, your friends don't want to call you, they don't want to see you if they're going to feel that negative emotion from you. So, I see there's the well-being, but I see a strong part also for belonging here as well.
Oh, that's huge. And I think one of the things that I've learned that is really profound when you think about relationships and positive intelligence and mental fitness is typically we fall in love with someone's sage, and that could be romantic love, it could be a friendship, it could be a work relationship, but we typically we gravitate toward one another's sage, which is amazing because that's who we are. Our sage is our essence. We all are sage. And we all are sage, and we all have saboteurs. We are not saboteurs. But what happens the longer you're in a relationship, your saboteurs start to come out. And without knowing it, if you can't label it as something, you're like, oh my gosh, who did I fall in love with? Who did I decide to be friends with? And so when we now have language that we can label this, and after I had my husband take the saboteur assessment, our dialogue changed a whole bunch, because I was like, hey, I think that's coming from the controller, not the man I married. And we're able to make light of it, but it also just really, really strengthens our relationship. So Love it. All right. Are we good? Can I keep moving us on? Excellent. This is fun. I like to be the presenter and then do the lead the Q&A. This is beautiful. Just hire me on board, Andrew.
You got it.
Okay. So you each have had or are in the midst of your own journey with positive intelligence. I would love it if you could describe that experience and what you have learned about yourself in the process. Shari, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah. So I learned about positive intelligence. I think it's been 2 years now. So it was during the pandemic. So it was an interesting experience with it in the best of ways, because for a long time I've been on the personal development journey and really connecting with self and learning about the gift and the opportunity and everything, being self-aware, coming into the program with a certain level of this awareness. But what I found so powerful about this is what you had talked about earlier, which is that you can do the peak, you can have the tools to be able to stop the saboteur or to be able to recognize it. But then that conversion part was really what connected with me, because I would always wait for hindsight to see how something helped. And now to be able to intentionally be able to find it in that moment was so powerful for me, and really just created I would say, a fuller and more rounded experience and awareness of myself, my own habits, having the label, like you said. I mean, there's so many positive aspects of positive intelligence, but being able to put language to it, have the labels, being able to recognize it, talk to it, and then be able to do something about it and convert it was a really powerful experience for me.
Awesome. How about you, Andrew? You're kind of in the midst of learning and practicing what all this is about.
I am. I'm week 2 or week 3? Week 3, maybe just beginning, I believe. So it's
You're
interesting
baby.
because baby. So I'm sort of looking back at myself and seeing this stickler that I used to be, when I was having a day job and, in the corporate world and managing rather than leading, with that perfectionism and wanting everything to be perfect. So I managed to get rid of that without this program. So that was great. But then, the controller still remained there. So, very much still wanting things to go my way, and jumping in and saving people when things are going sort of wrong, still operates there. But the very interesting thing I found happened when I've sort of gone on my own sort of liberation journey, I suppose, as part of my finding joy, that freedom became very important to me, right? So that became a huge thing that I wanted in my life. And what I've noticed is that really bumped up the restless side of me. So every time I have something come along which I don't particularly want to do, I don't find inspiring, or I don't find particularly interesting, I find a million excuses not to do it, and to intercept myself and distract myself and start thinking already about the nice thing in the future. So I'm becoming much less efficient, much less able to get things done, because taking that positive thing for freedom, which is a great thing, and now thanks to the program, I recognizing that can actually turn into a negative emotion of restlessness. So that's been super interesting to experience that. And the other thing I noticed, that I've managed to ignore the judge. So while focusing on these little things, relatively little things, I've sort of given the judge a bypass, and he's been nicely carrying on with his judging me and judging others. And now, thanks to the program, that's really helped me understand that that's really at the core of my challenges in my life, as those, childhood induced Catholic school upbringing type judgment things that are so deeply ingrained that even today they still can crop up. So that's been really powerful for me to get to understand these saboteurs, and then just go on to say the PQ repping, because I've been doing a lot of meditation as part of my joy journey, which has been fantastic. But I think this augments it so really, really well, because it like gives you these mini meditation sort of sessions in 2-minute bursts throughout the day. And through this repetition, you're finding that, wow, you're not dipping in the same way. You manage to break the circuit breaker, I suppose I would call it, in a way, and it sort of prevents you going down. So it keeps your meditation, starts you there, and then you have all these bad things happen to you during the day, and you go down and down and down and down. But with the PQ reps, you're managing to stop that descent, I'm finding already. So that's been super helpful.
That's fantastic. And so for those of you who are more curious about the program of which we speak, it's week by week, you're learning and unpacking the judge. You do a week on PQ reps, you do a week on the judge, a week on your accomplice saboteur, a week on sage perspective, and the sage, and 2 more weeks on the sage powers. And I think what Andrew's experiencing is what we know happens is that you've spent your whole life not focusing on these, and all of a sudden that's all you're focusing on for a week, and you're like, oh my goodness, this judge, woo, you were in there the whole time, and oh man, restless, I see you now. And so a lot of people will get into this and they'll honestly feel in the yuck for a little bit, because it's like, woo, I didn't realize how much I was self-sabotaging. Mm-hmm. And then the good point is then you get to learn how to convert, to Shari's point, is that it's not, you don't have to stay there. I would love to share a little bit of my journey too, just because it's, I'm probably the longest veteran of the 3 of us, with my 3 years of experience. So it's not even that long, but I was introduced to the program at the very beginning of 2020, January of 2020. And I was in an interesting point in my career journey, because I was ready, to Andrew's point, to be free and to break free of kind of this corporate world I was living. And I was doing the program at the same time I was at the national sales meeting for the organization I worked. And I'm an introvert, even though I love doing things like this, I tend to be more introverted. So those types of events were just not fun for me. So I found myself just taking myself to the break room or the bathroom and just doing PQ reps. And it helped me get through. And it was at that event that I had this extreme clarity about what I wanted my path to be, what I wanted to do next. And I actually ended up leaving the event early because I had a sick child, but I was also so empowered by taking care of myself in this moment that I'm like, wow, I can be the own agent for change in my life. And that was after literally like a couple weeks of doing this work, and it's unfolded, and my path introduced me to Shirzad in 2020. And it was a beautiful stars aligning moment. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this team, bringing this to the world, because we are all about changing lives and making people aware. It's like, awareness is such a gift, and it might hurt at the beginning, but it really can lead to the positive outcomes.
Natalie, I'm just going to interject for a second. There's a question.
Sure.
Susan wants to know, can young people do this PQ, and how young, and might it be helpful as they're aging that they would have less of these issues or concerns as they become adults?
Oh my gosh. Well, whoever asked that question, thank you. That is the most popular question that we get asked when presenting this material. And the answer is, we can absolutely teach young people to do PQ reps. I've been working with my young daughter, who's now 11, and she was 8 when I started this work. We actively work on this together. And if you go onto the Positive Intelligence website, it's like on the mission vision page, Shirzad's vision is for this to be in schools across the world. The program right now we have is very, very much for adults, but his vision is that we're able to educate the educators so they can bring this into the schools. So really for children, it's for children and young people, it's all about teaching teaching the techniques, right? Teaching them how to self-regulate so they can start detaching the brain from those negative neural pathways and start building those positive neural pathways early in life. If they have those tools and techniques at a young age, oh my gosh, can you even imagine what's possible? It's going to be incredible. So please teach this PQ repping technique. You know, a lot of people who are parents in our community label the saboteurs funny names for their kids so they can label it when they're in the negative emotion. They can say it's the boogeyman, or, you know, it's the monster, or whatever, and really helping them identify that at a young age.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? And I think the other thing is to think then about the parents themselves, because we know that a lot of these things get preconditioned by even before the time the child can talk. So the more we can help the parents in maternity, paternity situations to think about curing their own saboteurs, you know, before the child's born, I think that would be super, super helpful. So yes, get it into the schools, but how do we get it to the teenagers and the 20-somethings who are soon going to be parents, and help them, you know, discover that gift for themselves, but more importantly, also to give that gift of not being judgmental to their children. Super powerful. So great question.
Love it. All right. Let's talk a little bit about saboteurs, then we'll talk about SAGE, because we got to do both. So, you know, through this discussion, it's clear that you both are really evolved in your thinking when it comes to your own mental fitness and mental well-being. But what do you find happens to you when you do experience those saboteurs taking over? You know, just explain to the audience that even highly evolved people still get hijacked. What's that look like for you?
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. But it's important to say that, and I think that we should all know that and normalize it, that we do have those voices and those saboteurs do show up. But what I have learned through this and in my own personal journey is that it's about, like you said, the awareness. It's about the stopping it. It's about the acknowledging it. It's about not the judging yourself for it. It's about showing up for yourself with empathy, with love, you know, with kindness and gentleness, and having the mental fitness, having that muscle to be able to fall back on as foundational. So I say that because it could show up in so many different ways, in sneaky ways. And it's only because I'm aware now of my body, which helped. And I just want to say this, which helped with PQ reps, I'll say, because I always had a challenge with meditation, quieting the mind, staying there long enough. Or like you said, you know, you can't just do it in the middle of the day, stop for a meditation session. And this alone was such a game changer for me, because it did take me straight to that present. So now that I built that muscle, I'm able to recognize my own body. I'm able to recognize negative emotions more quickly because it feels like constriction now. I couldn't feel my body before. Now I can. And so I'm able to acknowledge, recognize it, and then be able to shift out of it. So that's my long way of saying that as evolved as we are and aware, it still happens, but now you're able to change it much more quickly.
Yeah, for me, I suppose it's very different for the two saboteurs. So for the controller, it either gets into the mode where I get sort of hyperactive and I'm going to fix this, if the other person will let me. And obviously what tends to happen in a relationship, the other person will put up a barrier and say, nope, that's not going to happen. And so then I get frustrated, you may maybe withdraw even, rather than go into that conflict. So, you know, it has, if I let it go on, it sort of spirals downwards. But now, you know, through this, becoming aware of that much earlier and having this almost pre-vision of where this could go and catching it through this practice, and almost laughing at yourself and the situation with your partner to say, hey, let's make this into humor, and saying, all right, we got you, controller, right? No, you're not going to control me in this situation, you know. And but say it from a place of love, rather than a place of, disdain or judgment. So either for self or for the other person. So I found that one. And then the restless one is more a case of again, maybe me checking out from a relationship situation where the person will get the impression that my mind is already somewhere else, even though they're trying to tell me something that's important to them. And they can see in my sort of body and language and everything that, I'm already somewhere else. It's like, so, that hurts them, obviously, if they're trying to say something important that's for them, and my mind's already on point 4 of something else. And so to catch that again and to use the PQ reps to create that space to have that conversation and to be present, it's a bit better. It's been super helpful already.
That's fantastic. Andrew, you mentioned, I think, one of the most important tools, which is, the making light of the saboteur. So there's a couple things that happen with the saboteurs. One is they're lying to us all day long, saying, you need me, like you got where you got because of me. So do not set me aside. And so that's the constant battle we have to fight, is to say back to you, no, I don't need you. I'll take the good parts of you. I'll take the little fraction that's good, that keeps me in line and keeps the bills paid, but the rest I don't need anymore. And to laugh at it a little bit, make fun of it, and say, here are all the ways that you've screwed things up for me versus saving me. So it's a really powerful tool that we do teach in the program, is to how do you make light of it and make fun of it without dismissing it. Because I think it goes back to your point, Shari, about it's really important to recognize and acknowledge that this is happening. We're human. We're having a human experience, and that involves all the things. So it's known. Well, why don't you give our audience just a tip that you've learned, that when you do find yourself in that sabotage mode, maybe aside from rubbing your fingertips together, what's your go-to? What's your kind of automatic habit of the mind that you've taken on to help shift you from that saboteur into sage? Oops, you're on mute.
I sound better that way. No, no, for me, it's always breath. I will always return to the breath, and it centers that, and then also feeling my butt in the chair, because I'm at the computer a lot during the day, and so when I could feel the negative thoughts or emotions rising up, it's okay. Let's feel the butt in the chair. The other thing that is, I know we said don't talk about this, but I forgot to mention, because it's so, that my biggest saboteur still is, because I took the assessment again, the stickler, and always wanting everything to go perfect and do great at everything. And I remember specifically using this before I would go into meetings or to events, to be able to remind me and center me that the present moment, that this is enough, that this is good enough. And that was so powerful. And so those are my practices. All the PQ reps are great.
I think Shari mentioned all of those, so I won't go on to those. I think for me, in addition to the PQ reps, it really is about taking that moment to be kind to myself before I do anything, and then transitioning from kindness into humor would probably be my sort of way to get to the next stage. So do the PQ rep, calming me down, having a focus of kindness on myself and admitting I'm human, it's okay. And then trying to find humor in the situation to move forward.
Amazing. These are great. And what I love about this is just so practical. At my root, I'm a very, very practical person and want to get to the root level, which is what this is all about. It's getting to the root level and causing from the root. And once you have this base of mental fitness, it just empowers so many other things. It's that next, the next leg on this journey. That's why, Andrew, I was so grateful that you said, yeah, let's have you guys go early in this 52-week experience, because I do believe that this can be a base for so many other of the superpowers that are coming over the course of the rest of this year. It really is a great launching point.
Yeah, I did mention one of the great visualizations that I use, which I learned from somebody talking about ego, but I think it equally applies to the saboteurs. That they said, imagine that you're driving a car and they're in the car with you. You don't want to throw them out, but you don't want to let them touch the steering wheel. Right. So put them in the back seat and listen to their advice, but just don't let them drive the car. And then I'm thinking maybe if I get my saboteurs a bit lower, I'll put them in the caravan in the back, right? So they sort of move a bit further away, but you want them, but you can't deny them. I think that's the message, right? Not to
They're never
sweep
going
them under the carpet. Yeah.
No, they're never going to go away, but we hope that their intensity diminishes. That's absolutely the goal, is the intensity of the judge and accomplice saboteurs to diminish through this practice.
Yeah.
And,
So
and to recognize you said
they
that
like into the caravan. Say, you
well, I was
guys
gonna
can go
say,
back there.
yeah, and I was going to say, like, to recognize their value, like you said, because there is a good part of why they show up, because they do believe that they're protecting us, right? So I have the same conversation that's like, my humor with it is, thank you. I appreciate you showing up, but I got this. And that just shift for me from, you know, the negative to the positive, that conversion.
That's so important. Yeah, the saboteurs are our greatest strength taken too far, and that cause all of our negative emotions. Let's just ratchet it back to that good part, and not let them lie to us and take over the driver's seat, Andrew.
Yeah, excellent.
This has been so much fun, and I'm curious, are there any other questions, or Shari and Andrew, are there things that you feel like are going to be important for this audience to know about positive intelligence and this superpower, to help them prepare for what's coming next?
Well, I think I'll stay at this stage. If anybody who is on the call, if they would like to say something, just put a note in the chat, and we can call them up to talk. Right, so they can even come on screen if they want to, or we can just unmute them and they can say their view, but no pressure to do that.
I would just say this work is so powerful, and I just really encourage everyone to jump into the Year of Joy community, find all of your resources in there that you have, engage in the community, because you have given all of us so much. Even I know you said earlier about like, oh, it's just the 20, it's super packed, jam-packed, you know, a lot of information in a short period of time, but it's so powerful because what you did is that you shared with us what we all have in common, and the fact that there is that out for it. So I just really wanted to just thank you and encourage everyone to take part in this, because it really will, when you can balance that and you can, you know, create a strong mental muscle, you will be able to access your joy so much quicker and ignite it in the greatest and grandest of ways.
Yeah, so I'd add to that, because one of the beautiful things in the program is the pod, right, where you're connected with other people doing this with you. And although we don't have a pod as such within the Year of Joy community, there are the chat rooms. And, you know, so what we would encourage people to go and do the saboteur test, to sort of put into the chat room, hey, armor, controller, armor, whatever, reckless, and then connect with others who have that same saboteur, because then when you go and work on it and you've got somebody who's dealing with the same SH, whatever that word goes, it's so much easier, right? When you've got somebody who understands what you're going through, how you're feeling when you fall or stumble a little bit. You know, maybe you'll find somebody there who will pick you up in the community and say, hey, that's what happened to me last week too, but we're getting there, we're doing the work. So I'd encourage that. Use the chat rooms to try and find people who have similar challenges and go on this journey together.
Fantastic. Well, I am grateful to be part of this. And if anyone has any questions that they want answered in the chat room, I am available there to do that. I know we've had a lot of people take the saboteur assessment and they're putting this as really interesting. So go the level deeper and do what Andrew suggested and put yourself out there. We're ready for it.
Fantastic. Debbie, do you want to come back and say a word or two to wrap us up?
Well, I found that thoroughly enjoyable, and I learned a whole lot, since I haven't taken that assessment yet. So thank you so much, Natalie. That was really fabulous. I am going to be probably first to take that tomorrow and probably be chatting in that chat room on our Year of Joy, wondering what other people are thinking. It's wonderful to have you. It was great to have Andrew and Shari also engage with their experiences. I'm extremely excited about where this might help us all build our joy muscle. As everyone or anyone who knows me knows, that's my priority this year. So I want to thank you all. Natalie, a big thank you for taking the time to do this live event. And thank you all to the attendees who joined. We really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you on our Year of Joy platform. Have a great evening, everyone.